More like you wanted another shot for the Max Caulfield scrapbook. You want another now? Huh?
No! Please, Kate. You know me better than that. And I know you don't want to jump.
But I do. My life is already over.
Kate, your life is still yours. And we can get through this together.
Just gonna come right out and say that Life is Strange is probably one of my favorite games as of late. There you go. Review done. Good night and good luck. I'm kidding, of course. While I enjoy the game quite a bit, it does have a number of issues that I am prepared to bring up and that I want to show and talk to you guys about.
Life is Strange is a third-person graphic adventure game split into multiple parts that were released throughout the year of 2015, very similar to Telltale's episodic The Walking Dead series. The game plays very slowly, to be honest. You go around each little area you are in, basically able to click on and examine almost every item you see to a point, in an attempt to finish certain objectives brought up by the story. Fetch quests are pretty common in the game, but not in the super annoying way. These can be done differently than the normal go here and get this and come back stereotype. It can also involve puzzles, time limits, etc. On the story side of gameplay, players are treated to extreme sets of dialogue trees, almost to the point of information overload, and choices you can make as you go along. And unlike some other games with choice systems basically choosing if you're going to be a villain or not, like in something like Infamous or Bioshock, these choices are being made through the eyes of a teenage girl.
While nothing you choose to do is extremely morally heinous, save for a couple scenes, it does allow Life is Strange to bring up its interesting gameplay mechanic, which is the ability to turn back time.
Don't like a decision you made? You can go back in time and change it if you want. Mess something up in a dialogue tree or find something new from the information you learn? Go back in time and use that instead, as your character remembers everything that happens even if you go back in time. Now this ability is limited. You can only go back so far within the current scene. Once you leave the area, you can't go back. You play as Maxine, or Max. At least it's not Maximum. Caulfield. Max is a photographer, going to Blackwell Academy to focus in photography. When the game starts up, you're just playing as a high school student in this fancy school. You go to class, get bullied by preps just like in real life, have a weird acid dream about the town getting destroyed by a tornado, talk with friends, ramble about the 90 things you can look at all times in every room of this damn game, go to the bathroom without a hall pass, good stuff. When Max gets to the bathroom, the story begins. Don't take that out of context. Max gets distracted by a butterfly. She goes to take a picture when a couple of people break into the bathroom, a girl and a boy who are discussing owed money for what I assume to be drugs, while Max hides.
I bet your respectable family would help me out if I went to them. Man, I can see the headlines now.
Leave them out of this.
The fighting between the two other teens who are unaware of Max's presence escalates. This leads to the boy, Nathan Prescott, to shoot the girl, Chloe Price. As the gun fires, Max reaches out in shock to try and help, when all of a sudden she wakes back up in the class she was just in.
What the f***? How can that be?
So this is how Max learns she has the ability to turn back time. She wakes up in the classroom and goes back to the bathroom, and the scene plays out exactly like before, except she intervenes by pulling the fire alarm, which distracts Chloe and Nathan. They all get out unharmed. And this also shows that Max has the ability to alter what happens in the future by going back in time. Admittedly, the first episode of Life is Strange is a bit slow. It's a little dull. I didn't really feel like continuing the first time I played it, but I did pick it up a few months later and I completed it in about a week. Highly addicting.
As it turns out, Chloe is a childhood friend of Max, and when they run into each other again, their friendship reignites. The story follows the two as they try and deduct what happens to one of Chloe's friends, Rachel Amber, who has missing posters all around the school and town, figure out what happened to Max's friend, Kate Marsh, what is this place called the Dark Room, which comes in later in the game, etc. They snoop around making decisions and exploiting Max's time travel ability, which may or may not be destroying the very fabric of time and space. It gets a bit funky in the 5th episode, a bunch of wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey stuff happens that I won't spoil. Until later, I have to praise the fact that the choices you make in the game do impact the game further down the road. Accidentally get your gun taken away earlier in the game? It's in the RV of the guy who takes it. You can break into it later and get it back.
The game does really have a nice way of dealing with some of these issues, although it can be a little strange sometimes. Something that is really good in the short term may not be so good in the long term. Spawning off of that, I do have a bit of a complaint with the ending. The game does do a very good job with choices throughout the entire game, but the ending is still a binary X or Y ending, which is what a lot of choice-based games tend to fall victim to. And while both endings are done very well, they're very emotionally heavy, I wish that the choices you made throughout the game had more of an impact. And even if the choices you make don't really impact the end of the game, I have to say, the story throughout the game is rough, it's emotional, it's depressing, it's mind-twisting, various other words I could attach to the game. It's done very well. It's probably tied with The Darkness as being one of my favorite story-based games of all time, and if you know anything about me, I hold the Darkness series on a super high pedestal, so that's a great compliment on my end. I like the characters, protagonist and antagonist alike. The character arcs are done extremely well throughout the entire game. I wish I could say the same thing about the dialogue, though.
I gotta say, the dank, hip slang they spit out can be hella cringy.
I'm gonna go kill myself.
It's a minor complaint, but it can be a bit of a contrast between hearing characters talk about deep emotional topics, and then hearing the phrase, "I'm ready for the mosh pit, shaka bra," or "let's talk business." These are not things I made up, by the way. This also isn't helped by the fact that their lip syncing is atrocious. Which brings me to the visuals. The game looks okay. I like the saturated colors and bright graphics, but the textures can be pretty bad at times, especially on the characters themselves. I was usually in the constant state of saying, this game looks great, to, ew, this looks gross to look at. Like it's switching between early Xbox 360 graphics and late PS1 graphics. But I've always been someone that says that graphics don't matter, gameplay does. The sound design is done very well. I enjoy the sound effects that are used when you go back in time, the voice acting is pretty good, outside of the aforementioned awful dialogue, and the music is actually pretty phenomenal since it's mostly indie music, which usually isn't really my thing. I'm more of a metal guy myself.
If you want to play a super emotionally taxing game with great characters, great story, good sound design, and somewhat cringy dialogue, I highly recommend Life is Strange. I finished the game just about a month ago, and I'm still sort of dealing with how heavy the ending was and how the game impacted me as a person. I laughed, I was surprised, I got angry, I may or may not have cried a little bit. It's a great experience. Now that we have the "this is a good game" normal review shtick out of the way, let's talk business. Spoilers. I'm talking about spoilers. If you haven't played the game, stop right here, go play the game. And then come back. Let's go. Now, I may not look like it, but I'm a sucker for love triangles and stories. I don't know why, it's just always been interested when characters are conflicted between multiple people. It may be cheap storytelling, but it's captivating storytelling. And there's a lot of it here. You got Warren, who likes Max, and you can choose to reciprocate that or not throughout the game, depending on your choices. Max is crushing on her teacher, sort of, and you can choose to crush on Chloe if you go that route, which is a whole nother can of worms when you go onto YouTube comments. It's a cluster, but I managed to work it out for you guys.
Brooke likes Warren, but Warren likes Max. Max likes Chloe, but Chloe likes Rachel. Rachel likes Frank, but Frank loves beans.
I was eating those beans. Are you fucking insane? I was eating those beans! Ugh.
Well, that was stupid. Let's get to the hard-hitting plot point. You see this guy? This guy right here? Mr. Jefferson? This guy. When the ending of Chapter 4 hit with Jefferson, who previously was just a friendly teacher that Max may or may not have been crushing on, shooting Chloe down in the junkyard? I was in my school's global game jam when I finished this episode. I was distraught and angry. I had no idea the twist was coming. Turning Jefferson from a nice teacher to a really creepy adult who takes pictures of captive girls, whose dialogue now radiates super rapey vibes the entire time. Quite frankly, it made me a little uncomfortable during his segments in Episode 5. Going back to Episode 4, there's another huge plot point as well. Rachel Amber, the girl you've been searching for and hearing about for 4 episodes of this game, turns out to be dead. Yep, just dead. Dead and buried in the junkyard where Frank attacked you earlier. Turns out Nathan Prescott was evil. Turns out he was working with Jefferson the entire time. He drugged Rachel to take her back for a photo shoot in the dark room and ends up killing her.
And the scene where Max and Chloe find Rachel's body.
I'm sorry, Chloe. I'm so sorry.
I loved her so much. How can she be dead? What kind of world does this? Who does this?
And finally, let's talk about the ending. I mentioned before that I didn't like how the ending was your average binary choice between one ending and the next. And while both endings were good enough and very hard-hitting emotionally, it still would have been nice to have more than two endings. I went with the option to keep Chloe alive, because I'm a selfish bastard.
And really, that's it. Life is Strange is a very emotionally taxing game. It's got a fantastic story, great sound design, a little bit of cringy dialogue, like I said. But overall, if you want to play a game that hits you right in the feels, I highly suggest Life is Strange. Good night, and good luck.